Hello and welcome to a humble Highland home. Thank you so much for being here with me today. The snow finally arrived and has since gone again. How quickly things can change. I think the snow looks beautiful, especially when we don't have to go anywhere. I don't like driving in the snow or ice. Past experiences have taught me that, and I've got the greater respect for the changing weather patterns. So for me, I try not to venture too far from home when it's snowing. So this is a perfect time to get things back on track in the kitchen, and it reminds me of a conversation that I had with our 5-year-old granddaughter before the Christmas festivities. She was coming to stay with us for the weekend, and I'd gone to pick her up. So we were travelling along our normal route up to the croft. Now for a little one, the drive from her home to ours can seem a very long time. So to break the journey up, we would normally stop off at the supermarket to get a few items to stretch our legs and to make sure that little miss stayed awake. But Everly really did not want to go to the shop, and she made her feelings very well known. So it got me thinking of the things that we were going to buy, and I started to do a mental shopping list to see if I had the ingredients at home to make up these items. As it turned out, I did have all the ingredients that I needed, and it helped me to get back on track, making as much as I can from home and focusing once again on our home economy. So today I'm making a couple of breakfast items. Oat milk is so easy to make and costs a fraction of the price than in the shops. It also doesn't contain anything else other than oats and water. You can add flavouring, like vanilla if you want to, but that's just down to personal choice. I used to buy oat milk until I found out the ingredient list and found this alternative with no waste or packaging. I will leave the recipe in the description below, but basically I use a ratio of 1 cup of oats to 4 cups of water. I soak the oats initially, then sieve out and discard this water. I find this just gets rid of any slimy bits that can be left behind. I then add 4 cups of water, whisk them with a blender, sieve it. I use a fine weave cloth. You can be left with the oat milk and the remnants of the oats, but these can be used in baking or added to your morning porridge to save waste in them. Just remember to give the oat milk a good shake before using, as it will separate whilst it's been stood in the fridge. Even if you don't normally use oat milk, it's maybe worth knowing just in case you run out of milk one day. Next, I'm making a batch of honey granola. This is not my recipe, it's from a recipe book that a good friend bought for me when we attended a wonderful yoga retreat in the hills of Spain. I'm following the basic recipe, but I'm also adding some other ingredients that I wanted to use up from the pantry. I will leave a note of the recipe in the description below, along with the additions that I've made. I know myself, life can be busy and I can opt for convenience as much as anybody else, but then it's time to get back on track as we gradually come away from large-scale supermarkets and instead to choose to buy into more local producers and farmers, which supports our local economy as well as what we can make for ourselves. So this is well timed for us, as for a number of years now, in January and also in July, we have low or no spend months where I try to use what we have, be inventive with meal planning and make sure that we're using everything before it spoils. Now we do have a couple of family birthdays to celebrate in January, but we account for that beforehand. And the no or low spend month just makes me stop and think before acting out of habit. I've already added some ground ginger and some cinnamon to the jumbo oats before measuring out the coconut oil and adding a jar of locally produced heather honey and a couple of spoonsful of water. All the wet ingredients are then heated gently just so that they all combine before adding them to the jumbo oats. Once the liquid ingredients are all combined, then it's time to add the liquid to the oats. Keep stirring the oats and the liquid until all the oats are well coated. And whilst I'm doing this, I've just put the oven on to warm up to get ready to slowly and gradually bake the oats. I'm baking these for around about an hour, and I'm checking and stirring them every 10 to 12 minutes until they're golden brown and have a crunchy texture. I hope to store them for quite a while, so I need them all to be completely dry. And whilst the granola is cooking, I'm going to make the most of the oven being on, and I'm going to make a crusty loaf. I ended up making 2 loaves of bread because the first one didn't quite go to plan and it didn't rise the way I'd expected it to. But one thing is for sure, there'll always be things that don't quite go to plan. But it's always good to have a backup just in case. And with this, given that we don't like to waste anything, the flat loaf will be made into herby croutons and breadcrumbs to be used at a later date. As the light fades, I'm going to finish off this bread, allow the granola to cool overnight, and I will see you in the morning. Before I store the granola away, I'm just going to add the last of the ingredients that I'd spoken about, which consist of some nuts, some seeds, some dried cranberries and some dried dates. These are just what I had to hand, but there are many other variations that anybody could use. For me, building a more resilient lifestyle hasn't happened overnight. It has been a slow but gradual process over a lot of years, and there's been a few life experiences over this time that have reminded me that I was on the right path, for me anyway. Sometimes I would lapse, and then I would get back to it. I've experienced my fair share of harsh winters over the years, and one of which really stands out as all of a sudden the shops were empty of fresh produce, which I couldn't understand as we are surrounded by farms and producers. After some research, it highlighted that most of the local produce was transported to the south of Scotland for processing and packaging before returning to the area via the supermarkets. It really highlighted just how vulnerable we are at any one time, having only 2 to 3 days worth of fresh produce in the supermarkets. This, along with a few other life experiences, has really confirmed for me that the path that I'm on is the correct one. For me anyway. Before I head outside to go and clear the polytunnel and the greenhouse of snow, I'm going to refuel with my homemade breakfast of granola with a few added ingredients, some oat milk, and if I'm still hungry, I might have a piece of toast. Thank you so much for joining me here today as I act upon a wee innocent reminder from our 5-year-old granddaughter. And I continue to read the labels and work out how to make the food items rather than buying them. And I positively take more and more steps away from the large corporations. And we continue to build on our own community and self-resilience. Take care of yourself and others, and I'll see you in the next video.